Jake Paul and Dana White are back at it again. And while we're glad it's nothing too serious, Jake seems to be cashing in on it by taking fun jabs at the UFC president. The latest drama between the two erupted when Dana told reporters to stop asking him questions about Jake Paul. Keep watching this video as we give you more on their love-hate story. First up, has Dana finally figured it out? In case you haven't heard yet, social media sensation and pro boxer Jake Paul is set to take on UFC legend and former middleweight champion Anderson Silva. A lot of sources are claiming that the fight has been confirmed, and all that's left is an official announcement. Jake's promotion company, MVP, has also hinted at a legitimate opponent by saying the problem child will be clear underdog in this fight. Well, with Anderson on the card, almost everyone's an underdog. But anyway, back to Dana and Jake's love-hate relationship. The UFC prez doesn't like talking about him at all. It seems like he finally has it all figured out. Maybe if he just stopped talking about him, their bittersweet rivalry will just die down. But what's the man supposed to do when his rival, Mr. JP, is literally waiting day and night to hear his name come out of the boss's mouth? But it felt like the boss was in no mood to talk about Paul and told everyone to never ask him a question related to the online star again. Honestly, that's a pretty justified reaction considering how much the press loves cashing in on their rivalry. It's almost as if they enjoy it more than us. Like we're absolutely tired of hearing them talk about it because it's clearly a one-sided affair. Dana talks about him, Jake gets attention and hits back. Reporters flock to the UFC president asking for a comeback. That's how it's been going on for ages now. And don't get us wrong, we have nothing against Jake, but just the thought of having to talk about him on a daily basis sounds extremely exhausting. It's even more exhausting when all he does is try to one-up you like a high schooler. Next, is Jake sure he's not the ex? So how did Jake Paul respond to Dana's comment? Well, we're gonna be real with you. He's done a much better job in the past. Apparently, the problem child said Dana sounds like an ex of his who can't seem to get over him. Dana sounds like an ex who still isn't able to get over you. Yeah, about that, Jake. Are you sure it's not you who's the ex? Just hear us out for a second. He wrote a rap song about the UFC boss. He shares memes on him. You can find more than a dozen tweets related to Dana on his Twitter, and his biggest flex in the combat world is his constant swipes at the president. So who's really the ex here who can't seem to get over someone? It definitely isn't Dana, because he never wanted anything to do with Paul in the first place, and if someone says they don't want to talk about you, it's pretty clear they've moved on. It's both hilarious and ironic, because now we're thinking about all the silly things Jakey has done in the past that show he's clearly obsessed with him. But apart from that, have you noticed how he's always trying to be the good guy, one-upping the boss? Remember how Dana told reporters not to ask him a question about Paul again? Well, he one-upped the boss by saying the media can ask him anything they want, and he'll respond. To all MMA media, you can ask me anything you want. That's your job, and I respect it. Again, nothing against you, JP, but it's really clear what you're trying to do here. But who knows? Maybe, just maybe, if he's able to do well against Silva, the fight world might just end up respecting this guy. Moving on, it's just half of the story. If there's one thing we don't like, it's blowing things out of proportion. Yeah, sure, a lot of you could argue that the media is literally doing their job by asking him questions. But have you noticed how they've only been pushing half of the story? It's not like Dana just told everyone to shut up and never ask him a question about Jake again. He actually backed it up with some solid reasons. For starters, the boss thinks he has nothing to do with him because number one, Jake doesn't fight for him, and number two, he's not even in the same sport. You don't see Dana going around making comments about tennis players, right? Or even if you want to stick to combat sports, Dana doesn't even talk about other MMA promotions. So why in the world is everyone so interested in fueling this pointless rivalry that's done absolutely nothing positive for the sport? Jake's been really vocal about fighter wages and healthcare. That's very good. We give him credit for that. But it would be much nicer if that's what he stuck to, since he clearly hasn't done enough to be respected in the fight world. Think about it. The only reason his fights sell is because people want to see him get knocked out by a retired and out-of-shape fighter who isn't even a professional boxer. Time for some more on the UFC. Up next, Mr. Rogan weighs in. Joe Rogan, UFC commentator and host of the JRE podcast, has finally weighed in on the Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva rumors, and he has a really interesting take on how things could play out. For starters, he thinks this is without a doubt the toughest fight of the YouTuber's career. Rogan thinks Silva is a legit boxer. He isn't someone like Woodley or Askren who are more skilled in fighting styles other than boxing. He's an actual boxer. But at the same time, Joe says Jake isn't exactly an easy opponent either. He thinks people tend to get carried away when they mistake his profession with his passion. Sure, he might be a content creator on YouTube, but he's a sick boxer as well. And here's the interesting bit. Joe said if people didn't know about Jake's YouTube background, they would have thought he's a legitimate, hardworking boxer after seeing how he knocked out Woodley. Honestly, that's a pretty solid argument. And like we said before, nothing against Jake Paul, but he's still the ex who hasn't been able to move on. Now for Real Fight Inc. Ahead of his death match against Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 279, Nate Diaz has just announced his new venture in the world of MMA. He's launched his own fight promotion, Real Fight Inc., that will host a variety of combat sports events like boxing, MMA, and jiu-jitsu. A member of Team Diaz told MMA Junkie that Nate is in the process of getting the relevant licenses and go-aheads to get things started in California. Team Diaz also told MMA Junkie that this venture won't affect his status as a fighter. We're not sure how he's going to manage day-to-day operations, but it's clear the 37-year-old isn't ready to hang up the gloves just yet. He's a huge name in the MMA world, with over 20 years of experience fighting some of the biggest names out there. So starting a fighting promotion associated with his legendary status is a really smart move from the Stockton Slugger. It'll be interesting to see how things go though. There's a lot of competition on the business end of things, with the UFC being the biggest out there. Finally, fun cut short. The UFC has a lot of interesting characters who love to express themselves in different ways. And speaking of interesting characters, Alan Perez, an Argentinian fighter making her debut, bagged attention by twerking after her UFC Paris weigh-in. She was literally the most talked about fighter that night because what she did was so different, and people really enjoyed it, and more importantly, she enjoyed it. She told the media that dancing has always been in her blood, and since she was so happy to be at the UFC, she decided to twerk just after her weigh-in. But while she stayed on the stage having fun, her opponent, Stephanie Egger, couldn't wait to bring the action. Egger cut Alan's excitement short by handing her her first defeat inside the octagon, and ever since, the fight world just can't get enough of trolling her for twerking before the fight only to get choked out. There's nothing wrong with what she did, but it would have been kinda better if she won and did it after the fight. Oh, and did you know the UFC cut that moment out of their official broadcasts? Anyway, that's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Is Jake just desperate for Dana's attention? And was Dana right to tell reporters not to ask him questions related to him again? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.